Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video, we are going to continue our look at painting Sigvald the Magnificent. And in this video, we're going to work on his sword. So it's going to be fairly quick and straightforward. We're not going to do anything too crazy. To get us started, we're going to use some Balthazar gold. This is the regular Citadel variety, and this is going to be for the handle of his sword. This isn't just a handle. Grab a little bit of paint, just the dampness of the brush to thin the color out ever so slightly. Could use mediums, but I find, especially if I use Lamian medium, we introduce a bit of a matte finish, and because there is a gloss prime down, I do want to preserve as much shiny luminosity as possible with the metallic finish, and so which is why I'm coming through and just using simply a little bit of water, just the dampness of the brush, just to thin the color down ever so slightly. And you can see here we're just simply moving it around. Of course, if you do over thin, you will get like kind of like bubbly type shapes on there. Anyway, Rune Fang Steel all on its own, and just a dampness of the brush to thin the color down ever so slightly. And we are basically going to use this and apply it over the entirety of the blade. Because we have this color in a very thinned out consistency, as you can see some of the primer showing through the paint, we will have to apply more than one layer, and that is fine because we're going to get a nice smooth finish as long as we are mindful of our brush strokes, and of course we are working with the paint in a fairly thinned out consistency. Again, basically this is just so that we get a nice shiny finish. And here this is about I think 2.5 layers of Rune Fang Steel. We're going to use some Nuln Oil and some Aethermatic Blue. I do believe that Nuln Oil was the regular shade variety. We could have used a Black Templar from Contrast, but I didn't really want to introduce that much black into this mixture. I just wanted to knock the very bright color out of this. And with this, you can see I've thinned it down, and then we are basically applying this in a glaze. Now on the upper portion of this sword, I'm building the color up towards the tip and towards the handle on this facet of the blade. On the lower facet of the blade, I'm going to build it towards the center of the blade, and that way when looking kind of head on at the blade, you'll see there's two different highlighting schemes going on. This one will push color towards two ends of the blade, and then color will build towards the center, and it just gives a visual. It's a very typical kind of look to doing a lot of the non-metallic metal type of effects on swords and such. You can see here I'm going to push this color right towards the center, and because we're working in glaze, you can see here how I'm building up the color, and when you are glazing, where you finish your brush stroke, it deposits a fair amount of color, so do be mindful of that. And if you have built up a lot of layers or really thin the color out, do be mindful of that because it can deposit quite a bit of color. After about 4 layers, I believe, it was like 3 or 4 layers of color in the previous step built up, and then here I'm going to come in with pure Aethermatic Blue. Now here with this, you'll notice that my brush stroke is quite deliberate, and here I'm trying to be mindful of the horizon line, the way he's holding the sword, and I want that to mirror on this surface. So here you'll see like little slight strokes, and in fact you don't really see it on camera too well here at the moment, but I am building horizon lines, and I had considered starting this process off this way, but I did want to have a gradient involved on each of these little points of building the shadow up on the blade. But basically that's what the goal is here, of laying that color down. Here we're going to take some Black Templar, some Contrast Medium, and I just throw a little drop down and a little bit of the Black Templar. And with this mixture, I'm going to again do the same kind of thing, trying to follow along the little horizon lines that I pretty much laid out before. And as long as you don't have too much color on your brush, you can lay these little lines down, and it basically completes the effect for you. And it's a bit of a cross-hatching for anybody who's familiar with like drawing and what have you. It's kind of like that. It's a cross-hatching type of thing, except we're not crossing our lines, we're just laying one line down. And again, with the bottom portion here, I'm building more color up towards that middle. Essentially, wherever the blade gets brighter, that's where the shadow on the opposite facet of the sword gets built. And of course, the other side of the blade is being done as well. We're not seeing the other side of the blade, but it is being done. It's the same thing. I don't think I really need to repeat myself too much here. With that, we're going to apply another layer. Again, we give it a few moments to dry, although I use a hair dryer in between phases here. And then, of course, we'd lay just a little bit more towards the tip and the handle. And then, of course, on that bottom facet, we build it up towards the center. And you can see here, we could finish off like that, but you can see how the color, it gets really shiny on the metallics. And then the color basically just absorbs all that light. And we're going to correct that later on. We're going to use some Sienna gold here. We're going to slap a little bit onto the palette. Just use the dampness of the brush to thin the color down ever so slowly. And very deliberately, we are going to apply highlights. We're basically applying these highlights onto each of the little high points on the details. So it's on the upper angle of each of those little curvatures on each of those shoots, and on the handle guard, it is on the high points that we're building up. But we're running these highlights along a majority of the length of details so that it pushes back that Balthazar gold just a little bit, but otherwise, we do get a nice, rich metallic. Auric Armor Gold is next. We're going to slap that into the rest of our organic gold, kind of going for a bit of a 1-to-1 mix ratio. It's mostly a 1-to-1. There was quite a bit of organic gold, so it doesn't look like we mixed into the entirety of it. And here with this highlight, again, it's a very, very minimal highlight, really just at the high points of each of the curvatures. And again, it's on the uppermost facing of details. So we're not doing any of the underside. Again, kind of in the opposite fashion of what we had done on the armor, where we were doing it in a non-metallic metal effect. Here we're just doing it in a straight up type of effect. Again, it's going to give us a different feeling. And I also went with gold just so that we had something different feeling from the main body itself. Runefang Steel's next. We slap a little bit onto the palette, a very generous amount of water, and we're going to grab a little bit of the paint, thin it way down into a glaze consistency, and starting at the center of the brightest point of the blade, I draw the color backwards. And if with the deposit of silver is a little too intense, then of course, I change directions and build the silver up towards the center. And here with this thin glaze, you can see how it knocks some of that opaque color down a bit. And here you can see I wasn't too happy with how intense the color was getting laid down, so I draw some of the excess off. But here you can see it kind of brings back some of that metallic luster. Of course, we could have also used colored metallics in this instance, but I figured why not just simply use opaque colors. Again, it's kind of just like what everybody's doing. And then with the Runefang Steel, I'm also doing an edge highlight along pretty much the entire length of the blade, as well as that middle portion of the sword as well. It'll get hit with a bit of color. Again, this helps create separation between each of the faces of the sword, and again, brings visual interest and makes it nice and bright. And I really wasn't going for anything kind of crazy here. I just wanted the sword to be pretty straightforward, as we will build intense color elsewhere onto this. I just wanted this to be pretty normal feeling. Null Oil Gloss is next, and here I just wanted to reestablish a little bit of that deeper tone in towards those shadowy points. Now I went with the gloss because that way it preserves that nice metallic shine without basically, killing it and creating these really dark negative spaces on the surface of the blade. But with that, we are pretty happy with how the sword looks. And you can see here with our final little look, again with the glaze, everything like that, we have a nice consistent look across. Again, we could have really pushed the color towards the blue side of things, and that would have really brought the blade out, but I didn't really feel it was entirely necessary. I actually liked the more subtle type of look with the Aethermatic blue, rather than trying to use something like Talisar or anything like that. Big thank you to my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below. There are varying tiers of support, and so a huge thank you to everybody who does. Without you guys, this channel would not survive. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.